decided to bring the plant deck. Because it's not Jessica as well. She'd have to convince Revs as well to play the plant deck.
Please, Revs, can I play plants? All right, well, we're into our game here as our duelists have loaded in. It looks like Team UK has won the coin flip and has opted to go first here.
From the unless Team Germany is on some sort of blind second strategy.
Could be.
The turn thingy being red makes me think that Team UK is going first and not having a super easy decision. Well, it seems like.
We are starting off this duel, and we are doing a big thinker here, so not going to be quite linear as normal summon Loki, I assume. We're on 42 cards as well, by the way, so generally I think that indicates to me that it might not be Snake Eye, right? I think that would be a deck you want to keep at 40 right now.
Especially because Bonfire is missing, I would agree. Yes.
Okay.
And it is, I mean, probably I'm going to...
yeah, there it is. Guanganol.
All right.
Yeah, a little bit of works by Revs here, I suppose, who's, like mentioned, a big fan of the deck. And Branded, you know, it's, I suppose one of the key major issues is that Branded Fusion is at 1.
Yeah.
But there's lots of ways to tutor and retrieve Branded Fusion, isn't there?
It's the kind of deck where you look at it and you're like, surely that's not consistent enough because all these cards are hit in some way, shape, or form. But then whenever you actually play it or play against it, it just has these sort of weird ways to just access the card. Like you're gonna fuse away a Cartesia into a Grand Guignol to send an Albion to send the Branded Fusion and then send a Retribution from the deck somehow to add it back. However, we're not gonna see it here because Nadir Servant is going to mean no more special summons from the extra deck. So we have not opened access to Branded Fusion, or this is a very curious decision to use the Nadir Servant before the Branded Fusion.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a bit of a weaker start, I would assume, here. Adding Fallen of Albaz and dumping the Lulua Lilith to the graveyard.
The thing is, it's always deceiving. It looks deceivingly weak, but the Albaz being in hand now means that the Cartesia's quick effect to fuse on the opponent's turn basically opens up the entire extra deck for Team UK here. So we will have to wait and see.
And what are the Dogmatica cards you typically play?
Do
we play like an Ecclesia in the main at all, or?
I would think you just play the Nadir Servant. I believe Quem is treated as a Dogmatica card. Yes, there it is.
Always treated as a Dogmatica and Despia. Special summoning Quem. So Lulua Lilith in the end phase gets to special summon, and on summon we get to send an Albaz or a card that mentions it.
And this is where it comes in. This is where it's deceivingly powerful. Like it's not something you would normally. You just focus so much on Branded Fusion when you watch Branded play, but especially in the hands of good players who've been playing the deck for a decent amount of time, like I assume Revs card. I assume Revs cards is pretty familiar with the Branded strategy, so it can be very dangerous.
There's a surprising amount of gameplay that you can have in the end phase with Branded. I mean, I've seen people, you know, like activate Resolve like high spirits into Branded and red, things like that.
Exactly.
But just a big setup here, of course. We are locked out of that extra from the Nadir Servant, and Team Germany, no disruption having been drawn there, is going to now begin their turn 2 with 6 cards immediately in the draw phase, dropping an infinite impermanence.
A big card to have here because that stops so many things from happening. That Cartesia was going to kick off a whole lot of trouble for Team Germany because it was going to trigger the Quem to revive, trigger the Branded Lost, go into a Mirror Jade, or maybe even, I'm afraid to say it, but like something like a Gimmick Puppet Nightmare Lock was not out of the question depending on what the face down card was. So that impermanence is huge here, and we do see a Snake Eye Ash. So one thing I like to see is that we are seeing Snake Eyes, obviously. It was not able to be avoided, but we're not seeing mirror matches yet. It's not every team that has decided to bring the Snake Eye deck. There is some experimentation here, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, sort of favorite picks from a lot of these players here. I think it's easy to tell, like, for example, the Branded strategy, quite a favorite of Revs, for example.
Yeah.
So it's natural, I think, for people to maybe play the thing that's that they're most comfortable with, regardless of whether or not it might not be like the best deck, at least in theory, anyway.
Yeah.
But
I mean, comfort is very valuable when you're playing a deck. There's definitely an argument for playing a deck that you know you're going to be able to pilot well, as opposed to maybe something you're not familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a really good start here. The Infinite Impermanence, as you said, a clutch point there, and specifically because Cartesia can only quick effect fuse in the main phase specifically.
Exactly. Yes.
Not even being able to chain there, using it in the draw phase to counter that totally. So we have to hope that, I mean, maybe potentially something like an Nibiru could be drawn, is going to potentially just be like the last line of defense by Team UK here. We'll see.
And we do have a face down card.
Yeah.
We do have some stuff in the graveyard as well, like the Quem could theoretically bring something back if there was anything, once a card leaves the extra deck. But like if they find a way, for example, to get that Cartesia into the graveyard, then the Quem could bring it back. Or like if maybe Team Germany isn't careful and gets rid of the Cartesia, because the Cartesia, even though the fusion effect is once per turn, it hasn't been used yet. So if it hits the graveyard and comes back, it's no longer negated and would be able to fuse.
So one of our lines here involving the Ash is the Link Kribo, the Link 1.
It's a
being
very popular and common way to get an extra body onto the field before using the Ash tag out effect. Because this way you can send the Poplar from your spell and trap zone, and the Link Kribo is essentially free in this moment.
Yeah, exactly. Just sort of replacing itself as a material here. So we do potentially have the ability to listen into the players here. So let's test that out, and maybe we can head on over to the desk and listen in on Team Germany right now.
Extend from there on, but it's a bit awkward. So maybe this first.
Put it first.
I'm just thinking what to send. It's either going to be Link Kribo or Poplar.
I think you're going to send either. Like, doesn't matter.
Not really, alright.
Original Sin from the hand, from the deck, sorry, for the Poplar, sending it, and now going to special summon a fire monster from the deck. Potentially an Oak here?
I mean, it could be an Oak. That's always an option. This is a lot of the time where the Jet Synchron comes in, which I assume, because the Fire King cards are not in Master Duel yet, is the primary target that sort of isn't part of the Snake Eye package. Because obviously, Oak is a very good card, but you can already access that via just using Snake Eye Ash. And so the Jet Synchron is only accessible via the original Sinful Spells, which is why we're using that for this. The thing is, like, the main thing you want to do with Jet Synchron is make a Formula Synchron to draw extra cards, and then you can do this really cool thing where you use Flamberge to put the formula from your graveyard into your spell and trap zone, and then on the opponent's turn you summon it out. And
oh wow!
Ooh, that's big.
Yes.
And that is something where I would not be surprised if we saw them fuse their own Cartesia away, but since they discarded Albaz, this is actually massive. Yeah.
So the Super Polymerization acting as a sort of full field wipe there, and
because there's more to come. There's more to come.
Yeah.
The Quem is going to trigger to bring back the Albaz that they just discarded, which can then fuse with the Link Kribo to make a Mirror Jade.
So we've actually managed to deal with we've managed to create rather two or three disruptions here, just out of that one Super Polymerization.
Yeah, I mean, Branded Loss triggers as well on the fusion summon of this Super Poly and gets them a Tri-Brigade Mercurier if they so wish.
And that's going to deal with any extenders in the hand that they might have.
Yeah, because the one way you would maybe push through it is like special summoning a Diabellstar from your hand. But, I mean, having Mirror Jade and Mercurier is definitely one way to do it.
All right. So should be an exciting part of the weekend is getting the players from the desk listening into their plays here. So hopefully that'll be ready at some point today throughout the rounds. But for now, let's stick with the gameplay at hand here as Team UK searches the Albion, the Shrouded Dragon off of the Lost here.
Not the Mercurier. I was expecting the Mercurier.
Maybe it's a good discard, right?
It is. It might be a matter of they want to keep the last card in their hand and rather want to discard. Exactly. That seems to be what it is. They seem to value the card in their hand more than a potential Tri-Brigade Mercurier, or it could already be the Tri-Brigade Mercurier and they're trying to hide that.
So yeah, Branded is, I would say, to some extent more consistent than Snake Eye, right? Like, I feel like Snake Eye does kind of like struggle without that bonfire sometimes.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Branded deck, just like we mentioned at the start, just has so many ways to like retrieve itself from the deck. Yeah. I mean, so much so we've even seen people in the Challenger Cup play 60 card decks with
exactly.
grass.
Yeah, which is very like it's surprising because you would think like, okay, Branded Fusion's out 1, Aluber is out what 2,
Yeah, he is.
And you would be like, surely you would want to play that as close to 40 as possible to make sure you see those cards. But then somehow these 60-card branded versions just keep doing decent in tournaments. Because Snake Eyes is the kind of deck where you just count the starter cards and you're like, okay, what are the odds I open one of these and then I'm fine? Branded is a little different because obviously you have these one-card starters, quote-unquote, right? The ones you just draw, the one Alubert, the one Branded Fusion, you're good to go. But then there's so many of these convoluted ways of just getting your play started. Like, we saw it here. Super Poly ends up being a starter card that got them into a Mirror Jade via some other, you know, like it's...
Yeah, many paths to find with this deck here. And anytime I've tried to sit down and learn Branded, it's been it's not a linear deck per se, right? There's so many 2-3 card interruptions here. Wow, we have a lot in the tank right now, actually. That's not bad. Sending the Witch.
Magician Souls is a very interesting card for the Snake Eye deck because it obviously doesn't need to play a specific target for it because the Witch just works as one.
Yeah, so this is really good because we've got basically 2 extenders outside of the Snake Eye engine, and the question is, like, where do you go from here? I mean, Mirror Jade is online is probably the scariest thing as well, and we can't target as we've used the effect of Mud Dragon for Darks here, but does actually allow a Link summon. That's going to be a Dark the Dark Charmer.
Dark the Dark Charmer. I guess we're trying to force out this Mirror Jade here as much as we can. My question is, what is the plan
What
after
could they have in hand?
The problem is that they can get.
What is the plan after this Dark potentially gets the Mirror Jade out of Team UK? What potential ways to play do we even have after? Because we've now used our Jet Synchron. We've used Magician Souls, which apparently is in the deck. So the only thing I can think of is like maybe a 1-for-1?
1-for-1 would have to be the last and final thing, and even then we wouldn't be able to trigger anything off of it. Plus, also now this is really good from the Mirror Jade because it gets to set up an Albion, which is going to trigger in the end phase to get
to 1-for-1.
Okay, what is just nice.
It is 1-for-1.
Not bad.
However,
1-for-1 for Oak into a Link 2, and then that Link 2 can maybe go Hita for... Do we have a Fire? We don't have a Fire.
And this is the problem. Here, Oak is able to be summoned. Oak can bring back 1. The problem is, where do you go from there? Because... you can Oak to summon out Flamberge Dragon. However, the big problem with Flamberge in this case is that you don't have a second monster to
link it off,
to get it into the graveyard, because
and Mercurier is the last card.
Yeah. They already had the Mercurier. That was something I.
This was like, I think like both players on both teams have sort of opened like almost optimally in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, they feel like they've almost card for card countered each other, and it just looks like we've gotten a little bit ahead with that final card in hand being the Mercurier.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the Mercurier draw there was not that lucky because they could have just added it if they were missing it. Like, they had the ability to do it. And at that point, Team Germany also, I don't think they had a way to avoid it. Like, at that point, you're just sitting there like, yeah, I think they have a Mercurier in hand because they didn't add it. It only makes sense. But what are you gonna do? Like, not activate your 1-for-1? Like, you have to try and get there somehow.
So yeah, it's looking like Team UK is very much
now they
ahead
have the Branded
here.
Fusion.
Yeah, that Albion triggering in the end phase, getting the Branded Fusion. Germany sitting with a singular copy of Oak on the field here, and it should be quite a formulaic Branded Fusion from Team UK to try and take down the last remaining 8,000 life points. So, yeah, Snake Eye, I guess, just kind of losing out on raw power there as well as.
We see the giant fall here in round number 2 of this Invitational. Not only in terms of the deck, but also in terms of the players. You know, the first world champion in the tournament is losing their first game.
That's a big one, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's, I think you've got like the moral advantage if you're UK right now. You know, must be feel pretty good taking down a world champion.
Exactly. And I am super curious about this post-game interview, because I want to hear how Revs has convinced Jessica to not play plants and just sign up with a branded deck to this tournament.
So, Light and Albaz being sent here from Branded Fusion. Albion is the Miracle Fusion style effect of Branded, and it gets to banish materials for its Fusion Summon. The Mirror Jade has used its effect, and it's not really going to be a big deal as that is only a 900 attack Snake Eye Oak.
Yeah, I mean, this is just going to be going through the motions of putting up enough damage because it wasn't quite enough yet before they activated the Branded Fusion. Now they should be good to go.
Yeah, what do you think of Super Poly? Is it like probably a staple you'd call it in Branded, I think, right?
In Branded specifically, I really like the card because what we saw there was very, very impressive by it because the Super Poly alone, while it was good, it wasn't as, like, it got rid of 2 bodies, which was good, but the fact that it also, like, triggered the Quem, bring back the Albaz, which made a Mirror Jade, which also made the Mercurier and Hand Life is how it really snowballs, right? This is how, like, instead of just making it into a removal spell, you actually turned it into engine if you're playing a Branded deck, which is really what puts it over the top. There's a Link Karibo, but that is not enough to hold off this entire onslaught of monsters. Yes. Especially since it's being used on the attack declaration. Oh, we call Divine with the Mud Dragon, a little bit of BM, you love to see it.
Yeah, Divine, huh? Okay, alright, I see how it is. And always remembering to attack lowest to highest, you know, it's just instinct at this point.
Yeah, this is a very interesting interaction. The Link Karibo, because it was brought back on attack declaration,
doesn't get a replay.
When they redeclare the attack, you don't get to use Link Karibo because it's not there. It doesn't see the attack being declared. So in case you ever...
Is that the terminology? Doesn't see it being declared?
It's how I best describe it. It needs to be on the field when the attack is declared.
Yeah, so that's a key point of replays there.
Exactly.
A couple of interactions some of you might recall throughout the last couple of years. Forbidden Droplet acting in a similar way as well. If you use it in the damage step, for example. No declares there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the conclusion of our second duel of the day between Team UK and Team Germany. Let's have a little talk about that. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I think Super Poly was probably the key point there. And yeah, it's a great piece of removal that we've seen throughout the years. That's usually typically kind of utilized as a big removal of like lots of Omni negates and things like that. You know, Baron and Apollousa usually pairing quite nicely together, but in this case, you know, used as an engine piece. So
yeah. And I believe we are
here
ready
with the 2 winners of our round 2 match here at the 2nd anniversary Invitational. Team UK, Jess and Revs, taking down a commentator, yes, but a world champion. So European champion and previous Invitational champion taking down a world champion. This is a battle of some of the best. How does it feel?
It feels pretty good. That game was I was a bit scared at first, but it worked out.
I mean, we're going to see a lot of Snake Eyes and Branded things because they're very popular decks, but there are decks that you guys are clearly quite comfortable with. We just saw quite a devastating display. Can you talk to us about what it is you like about Branded?
There's just so many different plays, and once it gets going, there's so many ways you can kick off, as you saw. Like, there was an awkward turn 1, but the amount we were able to advance from that state was just Branded.
Just Branded, and we're going to probably see quite a lot more of that, but congratulations. That was excellent. Obviously, quite a few more games still left in the round robin. Do you think you can carry on with this kind of fortune?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, that was a not great hand, and it still did so much, so I'm looking forward to it.
Good, and it was an exciting duel to watch, and I'm excited to see where you guys go next. European champion, Invitational champion. We can't do much better than this against a world champion, and that's quite exciting. So guys, don't go anywhere. We've got a couple of quick videos to show you, and then we'll be back with our round 3 feature match.